Coming off of the end of Combat Pack 1, which included pop culture icons like Terminator, the Joker, and the long-awaited mercenary from hell, Spawn.
Dude, I get to see more of what Spawn looks like. Dude, Spawn. Fucking Spawn. Holy shit, I'm crying. Holy shit, I'm crying. My god, I don't think I blinked. Holy fuck! Holy mother of God!
Why are we still here? Just to suffer? Every night.
Mortal Kombat 11 is now awaiting the launch of the Aftermath expansion. Hey, me from the future here. This thing down here, it's already out. Consider this a courtesy. Featuring a new story mode DLC, 3 new characters, and 3 skin packs, along with extra content that NRS has put into the game like crypt events and unique skins for a majority of the cast, as well as new stages, new stage fatalities, and friendships for free. It is very clear that they are making due on their promise to support the game for a long time. In its totality, Mortal Kombat 11 is a game with a ton of value. The high fidelity graphics are stunning, there's a lot of detail, the amount of single player content is massive, the online is stellar, and there's still more content to come. However, with Mortal Kombat 11, I feel like NetherRealm Studios set some very concerning precedents in certain aspects in the game, such as the bloated single-player progression, the oversimplification of gameplay mechanics, and the over-reliance on RNG to keep players invested in their games. And it's not like the elements I'm referring to just came out of nowhere. They have had integrations in previous titles, beginning in MKX with the whole unlock everything in the crypt feature, that eventually metastasized into full-blown mechanics and gameplay methods that did not pan out very well for some die-hard Mortal Kombat fans. The reason I am bringing all of this up is because I don't want their assumedly next game, Injustice 3, to end up having the same ailments. And as I aired these grievances, I thought to myself that this would be a great opportunity to expand on what I would personally want from Injustice 3. Roster, gameplay changes, stages, music, gear system, a new approach to single player, and much more that flooded my mind. And that is exactly what I'm going to do with this video. Keep in mind one thing, Injustice 3 as of recording and uploading this video is not confirmed to be in development or even in pre-planning. This is purely a video created under the assumption that Injustice 3 will be made. With all that said, please enjoy the video. NRS is at the top of the mountain when it comes to single-player campaigns and fighting games. Other fighting games took initiative to try and craft their own single-player experiences like Street Fighter, Tekken, Dragon Ball, and even Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite solely because they wanted to follow the path that NRS paved. But none of them will ever match the high production value of NRS story modes. Visuals, voice acting, cinematography, all these elements are so well refined that they feel like you are playing through a cinematic experience that you will never see on a big screen. So with that in mind, I have no doubt Injustice 3 will further push the envelope in terms of cinematic fidelity. When it comes to writing though, I have not enjoyed the last 3 NRS stories, MKX, Injustice 2, and MK11, as I found them to be very anticlimactic and pretty stupid at times.
We need help, don't we?
Not his. If he was still in charge, he'd still be wearing yellow.
I'm not that guy anymore.
Lantern. Maybe it's time I widened my circle of trust.
There are a couple of things that I hope NRS does when it comes to crafting another story mode, however. Number 1. Please go with the evil Superman ending in Injustice 2. Like many others, I was pretty disappointed with Dark Raiden MK11 lasting for 15 minutes and basically doing nothing, which is a shame considering how great of a setup there was with MKX's ending.
Shinnok was an elder god, impossible to kill. There are fates worse than death.
Oh shit, Raiden's pissed. I can't wait to see what he does in the next game.
By the elder gods.
4 years I waited for this.
23 fucking years!
In Injustice 2, you were given 2 completely different outcomes depending on if you picked Batman or Superman in the final showdown. With the Batman ending, you got the generic I won't kill Superman and instead will imprison him once again. Yes, because that worked out so well the first time. Ah yes, Batman, don't kill the manic tyrant who is responsible for the mass genocides of thousands of superheroes and innocent people alike, including some of your closest colleagues and loved ones, and excuse him to the actions just because you feel bad for him. Yes. Just give him the opportunity to escape once again so he can rain havoc and kill even more people because your altruistic moral code ends up in more innocent bloodshed than you care to admit. Yes, Batman. He killed Shazam!
Look how they massacred my boy.
Now, I'm not biased or anything, okay? I don't even like Shazam, alright? He's a fucking stupid character. But that is a disgusting act of violence that should be apprehended with the most fitting punishment for Superman's heinous crimes against humanity. Yes, Batman. Slay. Instead of revisiting similar conflicts with Batman's ending that essentially just resets the story, the evil Superman ending leads to much more interesting ideas to steer the narrative, in my opinion. The opportunity to expand on the conflict of Superman conquering Earth and building an army to conquer different planets or even different dimensions could allow for more opportunity to incorporate more notable DC characters and locales into the story mode. Because you have taken all of the OG DC icons out of the mix, it is a perfect opportunity to have smaller, more niche characters come into the spotlight. Being able to bring in new heroes and villains into the limelight would help people get invested in the crevices of the DC universe rather than just see Batman and Superman duke it out for the millionth time. Booster Gold could time travel to the OG timeline and recruit the classic versions of the heroes we saw in Injustice 1 to help out once again. The Teen Titans that were trapped in the Phantom Zone find their way out. Martian Manhunter could come out of these shadows as a DLC character and become a character in the narrative similar to Scarlet and MK11. Necron could make his first appearance in Injustice and claim the souls and powers of those killed by Superman's regime. Oa could be an opposing force to Superman. I know most of the Lanterns are dead, but NRS has grown quite a habit for retcons, which leads me to my next point. Please do not retcon anything. In the first chapter of Injustice 2, it immediately retcons one of the most important events in the Injustice timeline, Dick Grayson's death. In the comics, Batman, Nightwing, and Robin go to Arkham Asylum to prevent the Justice League from killing the inmates. This is where Robin accidentally kills Nightwing and prompts a rift in the Bat family after a tragic death, with Damian ending up in the regime. In the game, however, Dick is nowhere to be seen, and Superman floats Damian out of the asylum after Batman somehow beats Superman in a one-on-one, which makes this interaction with Starfire much more awkward considering that Robin never kills Nightwing in the context of the game.
You're burning the wrong bridges.
I want none with Dick Grayson's killer.
It was an accident!
The game relies on you to read the Injustice comic to have background knowledge on the characters and events to know what is happening in the timeline and the context of what's happening in the games. It's kind of like an incentive. The comic readers go play the game, people who play the game go read the comics, win-win. It's cross-marketing. The issue is the game and comics don't always align despite relying on each other for continuity. On the plus side, however, there is no current Injustice material past the Injustice 2 comic. They have an open canvas to make their own story without future limitations for Injustice 3. But I hope they are able to retain continuity, making each entry of the Injustice series matter, as opposed to trying to soft reboot the game's story like MK11 tried to with time travel, which led to individual character origins being completely skewered and led to previous MK stories feeling insignificant in developing smaller characters. Cabal and Sindel come to mind regarding this. I really don't want NRS to squander what they have going on in their narrative, because what is here, in my opinion, is an opportunity to make one hell of a unique story. Number 3. Do not put unplayable characters in the story mode. I thought it was dumb in NKX that I couldn't play as Sindel or Rain or Baraka, and that also never came out as DLC either. And then it got worse in NK11 with the classic catch-up muster duo of Cyrax and Sector not being playable.
But there's this one thing that does piss me off, and it should piss you off too. In the campaign, you fight against Cyrax, the robot, so the character is in the game. He's got a moveset, he's all finished, we just can't play him. Give me a break.
It hasn't happened in Injustice yet, and I hope it stays that way. For single player modes, I really like the multiverse take on the traditional arcade formula, and I hope that makes a return. I would also really love if Star Labs from Injustice 1 made a return. I've grown fond of these wacky challenge modes in fighting games ever since you beat up a car in Street Fighter and raced in Motor Combat, and it's been a shame to see NRS along with other big name fighting game companies not include these things in their recent titles. Hopefully we get some cool challenge modes or some mini games. Somehow, someway, the graphical fidelity between MKX and Injustice 2, games that were released 2 years apart, skyrocketed into unreal levels of hyperrealism. Facial mocap looked insanely polished and fluid, the lighting was off the charts, and the particle effects were much more clear and accentuated here. The visuals in Injustice 2 and MK11 are high quality. You will not see this level of graphical fidelity from any other fighting game unless it is made by NetherRealm Studios. However, for me, the transition into the hyper-realistic art style sacrificed a lot of personality, in my opinion, and doesn't do a whole lot to show me that these characters originate from the colorful comics they come from. I understand Injustice tone is very depressing, so it may feel contradictory for the game to have bright comic-y visuals when Superman is bragging about killing Shazam.
You bastard!
But in their previous two titles, they've upped the color dynamics tenfold in comparison to their older entries anyway. They're so vibrant in how these colors stand out, especially on certain stages. Injustice 3 could really add much more of a distinct style to make it stand out from its predecessors. Maybe adding some cel-shaded outlines or even cross-hatching on these models wouldn't take away from the game's bleak tone. It would be more like a celebration of the source material, similar to Marvel vs. Capcom 3. But where I really hope Injustice 3 really makes a big stride is in the presentation. When I'm talking about presentation, I'm not talking about the graphics or the art style, but more about what's in the game is used as visual accessories to further characterize the game. For example, the character intros. These are freaking awesome.
You once brought hope.
Now I bring justice.
Justice is blind, not heartless.
But they could do more in terms of artistic layering on their menus and in-game displays. The in-game HUD, I think, is okay. You can see that when each character's meter fills up, you can see their symbols light up showing that they have a super move available to use. But in my opinion, Injustice 1's HUD had more personality. Each character meter had different colors and decorations based on who you were playing, and those small touches did quite a lot to personify each fighter. Even changing the symbol depending on which skin you picked. In Injustice 2, all those embellishments are gone, going for a more simplified presentation that just looks uninspired by comparison. If you were to compare the menus and the character select screen between Injustice 1 and 2, Injustice 1 has much more of a dynamic presentation in comparison to how static Injustice 2's is. Injustice 1's main menu had this awesome panning freeze frame that shows you multiple characters in different situations, whereas in Injustice 2 you see a small silhouette of Batman walking up to a computer in the Watchtower and nothing else. The Watchtower isn't even a stage, goddammit.
Is it just me, or why was I so underwhelmed when I saw the main menu screen? I know it's not a big deal at all, it's not a big deal. But still, compare this to the main menu screen from MK9. What happened here? It looks so cheap and pathetic. I mean, I appreciate the change of direction, but I hate it.
Injustice 1's character select screen had these dynamic palettes in the corners of the screens depending on which character you picked. Some of them were clearly basic, but you had more of a feel of what each character was. Not to mention, I loved how the characters would be in different stances, both high and low, depending on if player 1 or 2 picked them. In Injustice 2, it feels more like a showcase with how very plain and clean the screen is. I do like the way that the characters have dynamic interactions based on their abilities to show off what they can do. The issue with it is that the background is incredibly stale and doesn't make these cool interactions pop. I think if you were to blend the character palettes of Injustice 1 and the character interactions of Injustice 2 into one cohesive character select screen, it would look something like this. If you aid these character interactions with their own dynamic backdrops, you are able to excite the player with which two entities are about to throw down. I'd want Injustice 3 to really expand on Injustice 2's artistic direction while adding much more to it. Another thing I will say is I personally don't like how many digits are used when displaying damage. It just looks bizarre, and it even made its way to MK11. It's just too much useless information to put on screen. I think giving players the option to just round to a nearby percentage would be great. If I were to compare Injustice to its comic book fighting game counterpart Marvel vs. Capcom 3, you know for damn sure why I did not pick Infinite.
Oh my god. What the fuck is that?
Marvel 3 put a lot of love into each aspect of the game's presentation. The menu has so many different backdrops based on which option you pick that show characters interacting. This one is my favorite. I mean, it's Frank and Spider-Man. That's so cool. The character select screen has such a vibrancy to it that picking character silhouettes just to see what they look like before looking at another color or another character is awesome. The comic book flipping effect when you go to picking stages is great as well. And in-game, when you perform a super, the end of the super is followed by a ripping effect, like it's being taken straight out of a comic book. The HUD has so many cool comic stylings to the combo counter, the compliments, and even the meter when it has a max display. A lot of love went into the presentation of this game, and that's why it looks so great. It looks so faithful. It looks like it's celebrating what these characters come from. I know these are small touches with a lot of effort put into it, but as we have seen throughout the history of art and fighting games and games in general, they do a whole lot to lock a special place into people's hearts. Another way to secure a special place in people's hearts is music, and it's way more important to an experience than you think it is. Let me preface this section by acknowledging that the enjoyment of music is completely subjective. Trust me, I review music on this channel, and I see what happens to Fantano whenever he has an unpopular opinion about an album or a project.
This album, in a word, overrated. I am feeling a strong 5 to a light 6.
Remember that this is just an opinion and more for discussion than it is about being objective. Recently it came out that Mick Gordon, famed composer of Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, along with 2 seasons of Killer Instinct, revealed that he did want to do music for Mortal Kombat, but was told that the head music guy at NRS wasn't a fan of his music. I already said that music was subjective, and perhaps NRS wanted to have a different musical direction for their games, based off 5 titles with banal results. The soundtracks for NRS games typically are very forgettable if we go by consensus. I do love the Atlantis theme in Injustice 1, that track is a bop, and the main theme of Injustice 1 is honestly a great track as well. But rarely does the soundtrack for these games ever go above and beyond to help characterize the game or the characters in any way. They just sound like generic orchestral backdrops and don't elevate the fights at all. When I hear a song in Street Fighter or Killer Instinct, there are distinct sound signatures based on the stage or the character. In Street Fighter 4 and 5, the soundtrack has plenty of distinct variety, spanning genres of hip-hop, funk, EDM, J-rock, jazz, metal, prog rock, even these orchestral compositions you would hear in like blockbuster movies. Every character has their own theme based on their abilities or nationality, meaning there's a lot of flavor to help represent each character in each location effectively. And it has led to some of the most iconic songs in modern media, not just fighting games, which is an ironic thing to say considering that NRS has the freaking Mortal Kombat theme song, one of the most iconic themes from a franchise ever, and they don't put it in any of their games. The same applies to Killer Instinct. Every theme in the game has the Killer Instinct main theme integrated into it in various ways, whether it be maybe the main melody or maybe an ambient backdrop during an idle screen, something like that. It's an awesome way to signify each track and tether each character and each sound to a core concept. Mick Gordon was able to give every character theme its own soul. Thunder has the Native American or Oriental embellishments in fusion with the booming drums. Jago has these Shaolin monk scribings and shouts scattered throughout his theme to make Jago sound like the chosen one in his collective. Season 3 even enlisted musicians Celldweller and Atlas Plug to compose characters like Rash from Battletoads, Arbiter from Halo, and even General Rom from Gears of War. And they did not miss a beat. The best part is that you can pick themes individually no matter who you're playing at or what stage you pick. You aren't limited to committing to a whole package. Having a jukebox feature during the character select screen or the stage select screen would be awesome. The fact that I'm able to gush about these game soundtracks to the point where I want to talk about them more is something I would love to do with Injustice 3. I would love to hear the classic orchestral themes for Superman and Batman. I would love listening to Blue Beetle's festive alien IDM and Red Hood's angsty dark jazz. I would love hearing Zatanna's diva pop and Flash's high-octane drum and bass. I would love to hear the OG Teen Titans theme for Cyborg, Starfire, Robin, Raven, and hopefully Beast Boy. Having great music will cement a game's legacy for lifetimes, and there are many examples of fighting games with resonating soundtracks. King of Fighters, Street Fighter, Killer Instinct, Marvel vs. Capcom 2, a game that is 20 plus years old and I still hear the Clock Tower theme in every other gaming related video. Trust me, it will do wonders. It is my firm belief that Injustice 2 had the most tame stage list out of all of the NRS titles. In Injustice 1, there was a robust stage list with staple DC venues like Arkham Asylum, Fortress of Solitude, the Watchtower, Themyscira, and even Stryker's Island. And what made these stages awesome were everything that was jam-packed into it, all the character cameos, all the destruction, the stage transition, and just how much was happening in the background. Injustice 1 stages had so many references and inclusions of various DC characters and DC entities in numerous ways. Just in the Hall of Justice alone, it had an insane amount of references to the JSA, the JLA. Darkseid is in the stage transition, Gigantica and Atom Smasher are fighting in the background, and they're even used as a stage transition. Wonder Woman's invisible jet crashes when someone does a super move. This stage was overstuffed with fan service and made Injustice 1 feel like it took place in a living, breathing universe that went beyond its main roster. And that feeling was felt across most of the 15 stages. Injustice 2 does not have any of that world building in its lesser quantity of 12 stages. If I were to compare stages that were shared between Injustice 1 and Injustice 2, I would say that while Injustice 2 stages look better, Injustice 1 stages are better. The 3 stages I'm going to compare are Metropolis, Arkham Asylum, and the Fortress of Solitude. Metropolis in Injustice 2 has a more sleek, futuristic look, but nothing of intrigue really happens either at the transit station or in the bar, especially when you perform a stage transition where the character is launched out of the train into the bar and no one cares. Injustice 1 Metropolis had 3 separate stage transitions that were more eventful. The street phase showed off the regime's presence. The rooftop, oh my god, had Atrocitus fighting Kilowog, along with Sentry Bots blowing each other up. Even the Daily Planet globe fell in the background and almost hits the characters. It was awesome. And the museum phase had a small amulet in it that may or may not have belonged to Quan Chi. There was just so much in Injustice 1 Metropolis that Injustice 2 just does not capture. Arkham Asylum in Injustice 2 has more of a dark ambience to it, but to no real effect. The outside gate gets really boring, and once you get into the asylum, the only significant characters you see are Two-Face, Solomon Grundy, and I think maybe Victor Zsasz, and they're stuck in cages. There's no rioting, there's no other characters, there's just nothing. The Asylum in Injustice 1 from the very start of the match has 3 entities clearly presented in the Batman universe. Hugo Strange is observing the fight, and you can see Poison Ivy's and Mr. Freeze's cells on opposite sides of the screen, even using them as interactables. Both of the stage transitions featured more of Batman's villain gallery. Scarecrow uses a signature fear gas, and the second transition had Riddler, Penguin, Two-Face, and Killer Croc ambush whoever comes busting through those doors. Fortress of Solitude in Injustice 1 had Superman's ship that he came to Earth in. There's a little globe of perhaps Krypton. Doomsday is a background interactable, and you can knock opponents into the Phantom Zone from Superman's lab, where you can see extraterrestrial life forms in the back. You can even see Starro. Injustice 2's Fortress just feels uninspired, like it's more of a makeshift construction site more than Superman's home. Sure, it looks better, but it's lifeless in return. All of that universal spark is just missing from Injustice 2. I think Injustice 3 would benefit immensely by focusing on immersing players into the cruel and frenetic and colorful world of DC Comics, as well as the world of Injustice, with just how much there is in these worlds. I also hope that in Injustice 3 that the stage list visits more iconic DC vistas. Themyscira making a return would be great, seeing the Watchtower with all the extensive members of the Justice League in the background would be great as well, but seeing more locations like Oa, the Hall of Doom, Titan's Tower, Star Labs, Belle Reve, Apocalypse, the Casanova Club, I could go on and on with the sheer amount of vistas DC Comics has to offer. It would go a long way to make picking stages much more of an exciting and alluring task when there's so many distinct and alive locales to choose from. Smash Bros. Ultimate pulled off the impossible, bringing back every character from the series, and effectively has spoiled the modern consumer's expectation when it comes to their beloved fighting game rosters, expecting all of their beloved franchises to bring everyone back.
The issue of the roster. I gotta say, no matter what personage they include and exclude, you're not gonna satisfy everybody. I mean, it's not like it's possible to create a fighting game with all the characters, am I right, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate?
Destroy the child.
And it's me. I'm the modern consumer. I would love to have every character in the series come back. And before any of you say anything about, oh, this character is dead, they shouldn't be in the next game. Well, clearly that doesn't matter. Injustice has featured many beloved characters in the DC lore, as well as some awesome guest characters. Except for you.
Yo, you need to get the fuck out!
I would love to see the TMNT and Hellboy return. I would love to see every hero and villain in the franchise return, along with some new faces to sell the audience the fact that Injustice is not just a simple battle between two opposing groups. It's an ideological war with many different voices and viewpoints and wills. Having a large roster really helps convey how many perspectives are in play in the storyline. For newcomers, I'm open to almost anyone being added, except a Mortal Kombat character.
Yo, you need to get the fuck out!
I will admit that I am honestly getting sick of seeing Batman characters. I know he's DC's poster boy, and honestly he does have the best supporting characters and villains galleries in all of comics, and the only character that comes close in that regard is Spider-Man. However, in the main Injustice entries, out of the 53 characters, 56 if you count the Turtles as separate characters, 12 of them are Batman characters. I'm not even counting Deadshot or Deathstroke. That is over 20% of the roster dedicated to Batman. If more Batman characters were to be added, I wouldn't mind, because I think all of them have been pretty fun to play as, but that wouldn't be a preference of mine. As I said before, I would love to see more niche characters get their time to shine. If I had A top 5 list of newcomers for Injustice 3, my list would look something like this. John Constantine would be another cool magic character to add alongside Dr. Fate and Zatanna. Booster Gold would be a great futuristic time-based character, kind of like Garrus. Beast Boy has been heavily requested for years, and I would also love to see all the Titans reunited in the same game. Superboy has actually been someone I wanted in Injustice. I think he could be a cool reckless counterpart to Superman and Supergirl. And my most wanted character is Rorschach. And yes, he is a DC character. Injustice 3 has a couple of advantages in its favor to make a roster this large work. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen because realistically it most likely won't. Reusing assets for previous characters is not as easy as copy-pasting it into a new game, which most likely have different mechanics. But this is my wish list, just let me believe, okay? Every NRS game has been made in the same engine, believe it or not, Unreal 3, and you can see between games they reuse assets quite a lot, which is not a bad thing at all. Games take an incredible amount of time to develop, so why not ease the load a bit instead of throwing away everything you've already worked on? And to make matters more palpable, Injustice has a luxury that Mortal Kombat doesn't, and that is legacy. In the new MK trilogy, every character essentially gets redesigned in each new game. They get new strings, new idle animations, new models. Basically, the only constant is their special moves, and even then, some of those got omitted in the newest Mortal Kombat. It was quite a disappointment not to see Scorpion have his leg tech down, Sonya missing quite a lot of moves from her iconic moveset, as well as Sub-Zero not having his ice clone. When I first played Injustice 2, I still knew Superman and Batman's movesets like the back of my hand. Superman felt a little different for sure, but for the most part he was still the Superman I remembered. Whereas in Mortal Kombat games, I have to look at Scorpion's moveset each game because his playstyle is so drastically changed. I prefer that you just add more to a character's pre-existing moveset to give them new dynamics, make them feel fresh while also having that legacy skill added to them. And the best example of this is the Flash. The Flash got so many more moves added to his base kick from Injustice 1, he felt like a brand new character because he could just do much more things. Tekken with each iteration has only added more moves to each character, retaining legacy skill while adding newborn depth to each character as well. The only character in Injustice 2 that got a massive overhaul was Wonder Woman, and I personally did not like it at all. It made her much more basic and rudimentary, and I would personally like if she went back to her Injustice 1 moveset. I get that they tried to fuse the weapon switching trait she had into one cohesive moveset, but that didn't translate well at all, and honestly made Wonder Woman much more simple, straightforward, and to be honest, way more lame than in Injustice 1 where she had more options. And while we're on this little detour, the only other character I would really want to have a redesign is Red Hood. I thought his base moveset was a disappointment because I thought he would use his guns more efficiently in his strings and stuff. He also has some very stiff, lifeless animation that does not suit him well at all, which actually brings me to the next area I hope they improve in, and that is... It is no secret that NRS games clearly have the worst animation out of any AAA fighting game out there, and it has become much more of a widespread issue people have had with every new NRS title. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time critiquing NRS animation. If you want more of an in-depth analysis on the fundamental failings of NRS animation, I highly recommend watching Sugar Punch Design Works videos on Mortal Kombat and Injustice 2, but I wanted to talk about one of the aspects of their videos that I always found to be a head-scratching decision, was the lack of hit effects. I'm not talking about the particle effects like fire, ice, lightning, lasers, none of that. I think they're all decent, although it is very odd that Flash is missing his lightning effect when he dashes. I'm specifically talking about these little blobs that are used to convey a hit when it lands, and to be frank, it looks awful. It makes sense in Mortal Kombat, even though I'm not a fan of it in there either, but it boggles my mind why it's an Injustice. For a game about superheroes and supervillains duking it out, it looks like they're barely hurting each other. Pair that with the already poor animation and you get a game where the strongest, fastest, deadliest characters feel weak. It doesn't matter whether you're punching a Superman, slicing and dicing with Robin, or marking your prey as Cheetah, they all look the same, giving none of them a visual fluidity to their skill sets. Every fighting game now uses hit effects to sell the players and spectators on the big hit. Smash Bros uses an incredible amount of them to relay towards onlookers what each hit feels like and what it does. You know what a spike looks like. You know how far you're sending someone based on how many rings there are in their trails. When you see that freeze frame where two characters hit each other with a finishing blow, there's a sudden excitement in who will be the last one standing.
This is so close, both men respecting each other. They know one slip up means the set. Nobody wants to go home. The banana, but he gets off stage. The ledge coming in clutch. No grab. This is anybody's game. No, there is the side B, and that's gonna do. Oh my God! The banana saved him!
Dragon Ball FighterZ has them all over the screen with numerous colors and effects assigned to specific moves. In Tekken 7, the hit effects make attacks look vicious and explosive. There's even a slowdown effect on some characters' counter hits, and when two characters are about to hit each other for the last blow.
Huge damage!
Look out! What's happening?
Injustice has none of these elements whatsoever, so it can look very flat when you see it in motion. MK11 added crushing blows, and for the most part in terms of spectating, it can sometimes promote a shift in momentum in the match, but pair that with the breakaway mechanic and it's kind of redundant in that fashion. I just want Injustice 3 to add more of an exciting element to its gameplay presentation, the better hit effects, more shaking of the screen when a character is stomping their way across stage, and even a slowdown, maybe zoom in on the last hit, would all be neat additions. Wait! Also, I hope they fix Blast's trait, because man, it is boring as hell to watch a yellow filter trying to portray speed. And when I defeat someone by sending them to hell and slaying them with an axe, I don't want them to see them get back up. It ruins the immersion, and the feeling of winning loses its gravitas quite a bit. Just animate them on the floor if you want to show the audience that you didn't kill them. Injustice 2 introduced character customization to NRS games in the form of gear. I adored the idea that you could be able to customize your heroes into different loadouts, similar to games like Soul Calibur, Tekken, and Killer Instinct, and for the most part, the gear system ended up being a huge success. NRS was able to give each character unique customizable items like Superman's Red Sun and Kingdom Come chest plates were pretty great. Every character had that sense of celebratory memorabilia packed into their item list. Some characters even had premiere skins that would give these costumes unique effects and voice acting, a pretty smart way to add more characters into the game that otherwise wouldn't. If they were to continue using premiere skins in the future, I would love to see the OG versions of these characters, especially with different voice lines. Classic Superman, classic Wonder Woman, you get the idea. However, the way you had to unlock certain items led me to talk about how the progression system rewarded players. If you wanted to get every piece of armor and customization, you would have to play the game a lot. You would have to grind the multiverse towers, or you had to buy them with metal tiered loot boxes called mother boxes that function completely off RNG with in-game currency. You wanted a cool choker for Black Canary or a new bow for Green Arrow, you would have to hope the game is kind enough to randomly give you one. And this also extended to shaders as well. Personally, I found unlocking shaders to be incredibly aggravating because of how much the game demanded you to play it just for a non-guaranteed reward. I would prefer just being able to color the gear yourself with like a color palette wheel or something like that. I think it would keep players more invested in customizing their characters, or even like a Soul Calibur character creator would be a nice addition as well. Injustice 2 also added these legendary gear pieces that you could get for most characters, and these pieces when equipped gave characters new passive traits and abilities. Swamp Thing got an air dash if he had this legendary gear equipped, and Red Hood could combo after a super if he had it equipped. And while the idea of legendary gear pieces was cool, the specific outline on getting the item you want rather than just rely on RNG led to a couple of design decisions that seemed to completely disregard a player's time. Are you seeing the requirements you need to do to unlock this stuff? It's insane! Yeah, you could level an AI all the way up and simulate their fights to get the requirements faster, but that brings up another issue where you're not playing the game anymore, you're just watching a fighting game derby. The only other game I can recall doing something like this was Smash 4, where you could train your amiibo and have it face off against other people's amiibo like Pokemon, but that was the core incentive. I don't understand the appeal of AI battles. I can appreciate that there's an option there, but why does it play such a significant role in progression? Currency at that point just became more of an insignificant mechanic. Speaking of currency, Injustice 2 had 3 different main currencies, one being coins, which you could use to buy different tiered mother boxes, each ascending tier possessing a higher chance of getting more rare loot, one being guild coins that you could unlock by joining guild and doing challenges, the last one being source crystals, which was a premium currency that was insanely hard to get by just playing the game, because you would get such a small amount after leveling up every character. And once you level up everyone, source crystals became more of a scarce reward in Injustice 2, so most people felt inclined to purchase these source crystals with real money because they were the only way to buy shaders and premier skins, which would cost upwards of 4,000 source crystals for a simple color palette and 6,000 for premier skins. The time investment for simple cosmetics was way too steep a task to ask a majority of players to commit to. In the gear system, there was another currency called regen tokens that you could use to regenerate gear to your current level or transform lesser gear into more leveled stats. So in total, that's 4 currencies in this game. And in the next NRS title, MK11, they went all in on prolonging the single-player experience to the extent where it felt like the studio just did not respect their time. 4 different currencies, incredibly stretched out tower events to unlock basic skins and gear, the crypt being almost entirely RNG with the exceptions of these character chests that cost hearts, which required the player to perform fatalities and brutalities over and over again to the point where they lost their novelty and became a chore to do. And one of the most confusing implementations of upgrading your gear with these specifically shaped augment slots with a weird level up system that made no sense. and they received quite a bit of backlash for the monetization and RNG practices they exhibited.
Whether you are a Marxist or a capitalist, I think we can all agree that 4 currencies, that is fucked up. There's like a rule of thumb. The more currencies there are, the more the game is a ripple. The disgusting smegma is all over the place. It is visible all the time.
What it comes down to is that Mortal Kombat 11 basically has a mobile game economy and monetization model. You have currency for forging things, a massive grind to level up gear and re-roll that gear to slot the augmentations, which are themselves a pretty hefty grind. You can go into the loot box crypt and gamble a bit to get some of the grindy items, but even then it's a really convoluted system that does nothing but leave the player feeling very unhappy.
There's a bunch of stuff that you can unlock for all the myriad characters featured in this title. Unfortunately, instead of allowing players to reasonably unlock all of these cool things, they add a lot of filler and a lot of padding to make sure that they have to grind for a long time to get to the stuff they want.
Mortal Kombat 11 is kind of like a grindy microtransaction-y game without the microtransaction. Tons of currencies, heaps of grind, and lots of ways to skip that grind, but you can't actually buy many things to skip that grind. It is a very grindy game in terms of unlocking the kind of cosmetic gear that you want.
Bad news is that it's full of the same junk that's infesting a lot of AAA games these days. Microtransactions.
Is he back? Who's got some coke? Hey.
So yeah, there's a lot to like in Mortal Kombat 11, but the microtransactions are still there and can lead to a lot of backlash. As the Six Axis put it, Mortal Kombat 11's tightly designed gameplay is bogged down by a grindy system of loot and consumables that only serves to artificially extend your playtime in the most tedious ways imaginable.
I was getting a little bit worried of the microtransactions. Now
you won't be angry at it. You won't be angry at it.
Featured items, 500 fucking time crystals, $5 for 500 time crystals, 2,500. They did it! They found a way to do it! They fucking found a way! Where's the crypt? It's 100% RNG? No! 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 But now even they've made that like a mobile game even more now. It's like opening loot chests.
Loot boxes. Do we have loot boxes in Mortal Kombat 11?
No.
Joe, where's my Raiden Brutality Elder Storm Strike?
See, what happened was you weren't.
Joe, where is my Raiden Brutality? You did it! You fucked it up! You fucked up the crib! What do you mean I won't be mad? I will be mad! You got it. No! Look at all this shit. Look at this shit and countless more. And plus there's tower keys for certain tower unlocks. Do we really need all this shit in Mortal Kombat?
You won't be angry at it.
I don't want to see any of this in Injustice 3. I want progression to feel more like being rewarded for having fun, not sinking an unhealthy amount of time into the game because it won't randomly generate the Batman cowl I want, and I have to keep going until it does. Why not just have small requirements for lesser gear, and more committal yet attainable requirements for more prestigious items? I played the game religiously for 2 years, and I still didn't unlock everything the game had to offer. I never got everyone's shaders, I never got the Bruce Wayne Premier skin, and I never got the Staff of Grayson. Which leads me to another thing I don't want to see in Injustice 3, because in my opinion, not only was it a very questionable decision to lock character moves behind RNG and tower-specific events, it was a decision that limited character depth and had a big impact on the overall Mortal Kombat X introduced variations for the first time in NRS games, and in my opinion it was pretty well done. Though there were obviously better variations than others, it actually felt like it gave characters 3 unique playstyles that were all very well thought out. And since the variation system was a resounding success, NRS tried to expand on it in future titles, and even tried putting it in the Injustice series. Gear moves in Injustice 2 and custom variations in MK11 allowed you to pick special moves and even what strings you wanted. Yes! Combo strings are relegated to slotted abilities. At least in MK11, all the custom moves are unlocked, whereas in Injustice 2, you had to mostly rely on RNG or pray to Gorsh. The towers had an ability event going on, which made no sense to me at all. Why would you spend extra time designing and animating these moves, only for most people never to see them both in casual or competitive play? Both implementations feature the ability to create your own variations based off the moves you pick, but you can't use them in a ranked or tournament play, so the whole pick your playstyle mechanic is all for naught if you want to take the game seriously. I don't want even the slightest bit of variations to creep its way back into Injustice 3. The idea that these superpowered characters have to pick and choose what ability they would sacrifice for another move just does not sound right. For some characters, it makes even less sense because they don't have to sacrifice anything. All but one of Superman's gear moves are completely additional. They don't replace any existing moves, so why not just give him these abilities? Why would they not use every tool in their arsenal to win a fight? It would be way more interesting if you gave these fighters all of their skills at once. You give them much more depth with how many moves they have at their disposal. And if you want a clear example of how opening up the toolbox gives you endless possibilities, I would like to bring your attention to Dante. Please put Dante in Smash, Sakurai, I love you, stay safe. In the original DMC3, Dante had a total of 6 styles he had. Each one gave Dante a new specialty. For example, if he had Gunslinger on, then he got new abilities for all of his guns. If you didn't pick it as his main style, you could still use the guns, but you couldn't use them to their fullest potential, and this applied to every other style in the game. I'll refer to this as the current variation system. There is a lot to use, but due to the very selective nature of the game, you would have to stop and choose which style or variation you want. You would still have fun with what you get, but deep down you have that inner feeling that you could have way more fun if you had everything at your fingertips. But what if I told you that there was a game where you had all of those styles and weapons and skills at your disposal? A game where you no longer had to choose an option to play the way you wanted, instead gave you the complete freedom to experiment to your heart's content. A game where you didn't ponder upon the centuries-old questions.
Will it combo?
A game that put the power of God and Lucifer into your hands, giving you the feeling of endless discovery. Well, it exists.
Devil May Cry 5.
In DMC5, Dante has access to all of his styles and weapons, and you can switch freely between any of them at any point in time, leading to an unending barrel of creativity as you see in the clips. I'm not saying Injustice 3 needs a style system or anything, although that would be cool, but I would love to see an emphasis on seeing characters go wild with a fully stocked arsenal of moves. That's all I'm saying. Moving on to the gameplay mechanic, I think Injustice already has a great foundation for itself. I love the stage transition mechanics, I love the class system, the bounce attacks are pretty great too, and in Injustice 2 they added more movement and defensive mechanics. The roll mechanic was well realized. You could air dodge in place or backwards out of juggles. I really hope they don't carry any mechanics from MK11 over into Injustice 3, like the auto regen meter and especially Breakaway. All my companions and close ones hate Breakaway. But the one thing I hope never rears its ugly head again is chip kills and dot kills. I'll make a video that further expands on my burning hatred for chip kills, but I will keep it brief for this video. I cannot express to you how anticlimactic it is to watch a grand finals match end with Aquaman poking you to death. What's even worse is damage over time kills. It's not fun watching this Italian mob boss spin his meatballs to kill a blocking player, or a Scarecrow turn on his trait and teleport behind you. You can't do anything about it because if you approach him you're dead, and if you try to keep your distance he can just teleport and you're dead. It ruins tension and finality to the flow of these matches, and it's such a boring way to end a fight. I personally just don't want to see them. What I do want to see are more defensive and movement options, like maybe parrying, short hops, insta-teching, maybe have some walk speeds more variable, kind of like King of Fighters, and most importantly, not have a stance switch button. It is the most useless function in fighting game history, and it's a waste of a button for the player. You could use this for anything else. Insta-dash, short hop, insta-roll, simple special moves. You can even map trait to this button, so you can make circle or be a new attack button. It could be a taunt button for all I care. Ooh, even better. You can implement a cancel feature like a roaming cancel or an FADC, or even max mode for more combo variety. Just anything. Literally anything besides switching your stance. And lastly, we have gameplay feel. Mortal Kombat 11 was a stark departure from the frenetic nature of MKX, opting for a more simplified approach with more meaningful encounters, stressing footsie-based gameplay rather than just get hit with 50-50s and these long, elaborate combos that melted your life.
When you're down, when it's 2-2, it's going even, you know?
Yeah.
So switching has to be a major change, but man, at the end of the day, you lose 41% of the match. Painting game.
2 combos!
And Biohazard does not drop this combo.
KP!
Stop it!
2 combos!
Oh my god!
The reason NRS went in this direction was because their community often complained how BS and dishonest their games are. and to NRS's credit, they listened. MK11 is a much more competitive and honest fighting game, and the reaction has been mixed. Some players appreciated the more methodical approach the game introduced, while others weren't satisfied with how simplified and slow the game's pace became. For me at first, I did like how strategic I thought the game was, managing your resources, deciding when to use crushing blows since they're only one-time use, kind of like lethal hits in Soul Calibur, and whether or not to use a fatal blow for damage or to seal out a round were really engaging. But the more I played, the more winning I got to play. I was doing the same thing over and over again, and I really didn't have fun exploring what these characters could do because they just felt very novel. It's not a bad fighting game by any means. I think it's a good fighting game, but it wasn't the evolution I personally was hoping for MK11. For Injustice 3, I want this game to be crazy. I want characters that are not solely designed for zoning. I want them to have cool things they can do without limitations. I would want a fast-paced, primarily offensive game with a lot of defensive mechanics that I listed earlier. I want there to be insane combos with tight execution. I want there to be character specialists that I root for in an unfavorable matchup, and these 10 sequences where a player is down to their last sliver of health and has to find a way to get that last hit to turn the match upside down. I want the game to be exciting and make me feel like the more I play it, the more I realize I have so much more to learn and so much more I can do. I don't want Injustice 3 to suffer the plight of oversimplification that has recently swayed the direction of recent fighting games like Street Fighter V, MK11, and currently Guilty Gear Strive. I want it to be full of superhero craziness and insane mechanical depth with a focus on fun rather than the recent allure of competitive balance. The idea of restricting players and characters for that matter by taking away moves, mechanics, and options does not lead to a more in-depth game. It leads to games where players want more freedom and are often frustrated by how confined the game is.
There is definitely a modern trend in a lot of recent fighting games that take existing mechanics from previous entries in its series, and we're gonna tone it down. We're going to make it less about combos. We're gonna make it less about the options you have. We're gonna make it less things that you have to worry about. This whole habit that a lot of fighting game developers have, where the previous entries in the series, they sort of tone down those entries in the series so that people, for the sake of getting people to come in, it doesn't work. It actually has no history of ever making its audience happy or specifically working for the sake of sales. Lowering the skill barrier of a fighting game isn't what sells units. That situation where they're listening to these players that have this very vocal minority opinion that these high-level mechanics or these high-level strategies that people are doing that I can't do is the reason I'm losing, that is definitely not the reason you're losing. If it's a situation where you start toning things down, you're just affecting the long run. Like, your game is going to be really exciting for the first couple of months, and then you're gonna lose people. Fighting game players need options. We need the option for things to be different, the option to go for more difficult things, the option to choose to go for limited stuff compared to high damaging things. Options are the most important things in fighting games, especially for players.
This ongoing fighting game philosophy right now that dumbing your game down generates more appeal isn't a popular or engaging model to base your game around. What players want are options, and what everyone else wants is a good tutorial mode, which both Injustice 2 and MK11 have.
It has some incredible and deep tutorial.
And the tutorial in this game is insane. The tutorial covers frame data, for God's sakes. I've never seen a tutorial as in-depth as this game has to offer.
Hands down the best in the business, with individual character combo training, fatality training, basic, advanced, defensive. It even has freaking frame data tutorials, for Christ's sake.
It just gives you the option of learning everything you can about Mortal Kombat, how the gameplay is done, advanced combos, combo starters, even individual character training. There's a whole lot of shit in the tutorial, and it is incredibly well done.
There is a lot of potential here, and I hope they can capitalize the best they can to make a manic-ass fighting game. I made this video because I want Injustice 3 to be the best game it possibly could be, and there's no reason it can't. NetherRealm Studios has access to a massive budget, an incredible amount of resources, and two of the largest IPs in modern media. This, in my opinion, is an incredible opportunity to craft a legendary game, learning from their past work, while also observing the incredibly dense and diverse contemporary fighting game market and seeing what makes those games tick and what makes them so beloved. And though most of the things I listed in this video will most likely not happen, I wanted to say that if Injustice 3 were to happen, the thing I wish for the most is for NRS to take their time. These guys put out a game every 2 years and they never give their games time to develop or establish their identities, because by the time that happens, the next game is already on the way and the other games are left to decay and all that excitement has dissipated. Don't burn yourselves out. Let the game cook in the oven for as long as it needs to, so the taste lasts longer and people will only want to eat more of it. But long story short, I hope Injustice 3 is a bonkers ass fighting game. Hey guys, thank you for watching the video. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. I know the audio had some hiccups here and there. I have ordered a new mic and it should come in pretty soon, so hopefully in future videos it's not that noticeable. Please do consider subscribing and liking the video if you enjoyed content like this. I know I primarily do music reviews, but I am working on new game ideas, like maybe a hype check for future upcoming titles like Last of Us 2 or Ghost of Tsushima. I am currently working on the chip kill video, so that should be out pretty soon. And yeah, be sure to leave your thoughts down in the comment section down below. What did I do wrong? What did you like? What would you want from Injustice 3? What would you want from other fighting games that you like? Even some album or musical recommendations would be great too. Please take care of yourselves, please stay safe, and I will catch you on the next video. Thank you for watching.